Yes, hi everyone. Welcome to another Living a Satisfying Life. We have Colin Drake here today from Australia. And of course, Dr. Eva is down in Florida. And we're going to be tackling this conversation about living a satisfying life, what it takes for all of us to come to that conclusion so that we could actually talk about it with others. And that's really what we do. Dr. Eva speaks to her client, her patients. I speak to my clients, both that are children in the form of brotherclaus.com, as well as adults in the Seminar Living SOS. And Colin has written several books, and he also has a client base. And so with that, why don't we start with interviewing? Is there something I haven't said, Colin, please?
No, I was just laughing about the client base. I don't regard people as clients. They're all just one with me, you know. I just don't think about people in that term.
Relationships.
Yeah, they're just, you know, they're fellow explorers. That's how I describe everybody, fellow explorers.
Explorers, okay. But are you still, so they're not, I know that pottery was your business.
Yeah, it still
is still a business?
In a little bit. I make the odd pot.
But I mean, you're an author, you've published.
I write the odd book.
Okay. So why don't you take away a little bit about your background?
Okay. All right. Okay, fine. So I was born in a very strict Methodist household, right? In the late 40s. So in a war-torn London, okay. There was still rationing. It was very austere. And then at the age of 11, I went to a Methodist boarding school, which you can imagine what a Methodist boarding school in the 1950s was like. Just think about that. Yeah, I know. So by the time I left there, I was pretty ready just to break out. Well, luckily, this was by now, it was the early to mid 60s, and I was living in London. So that was the perfect place to break out, because the hippie thing was just happening, you know, love, peace, and it was just amazing. So I got into that, got really into that because I was living right in there. And at some stage, I took some acid. Now, what happened, I was at a party, and I'd never taken anything like that before. I was at a party, and I probably had a few drinks, so I was a bit, you know, merry. And this Californian guy came up to me and said, "Oh, have you ever had acid?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, take this." I said, "Yeah, okay." And about an hour later, I went up to him and said, "Oh, that didn't do anything." He said, "I have another one." So I did. And about an hour later, I was what I would consider to be clinically mad. I was lying on my bed, screaming, shouting, laughing, crying, well, just going through these states one by one. And everything, what it actually did was it opened the gate between the unconscious and the conscious, and everything that had been drummed into me since I was born, all that conditioning, all that religious conditioning, everything, it just poured out, just came out. And I had no control over it, you know, which is, well, it was quite amazing. But there was one small part of my being that said, "Oh, you're mad." And then that same part of my being said, "Hang on though, that's all mad. But this part that's saying that's mad, that's not mad. That's quite," because I could see it, you know, it was quite sane in the madness, you know. And I didn't have any words for it at the time, but it was just a very profound thing. And when I came out of that experience, it felt like somebody that literally brainwashed me. They'd taken my brain and washed out all that crap that had been forced into it over the years. And that was a very freeing, liberating experience, because, well, you can imagine, if you could get rid of all your negative conditioning in one fell swoop.
One fell swoop. Wow.
Yeah, well, it was pretty amazing. And then after that, I took mescaline a few times. Now, mescaline, have you ever taken synthetic mescaline?
No.
Okay. Have you ever taken mushrooms?
No.
No, okay. Now, acid can be very freaky, as you probably imagine from what I just told you. You can go up and down, all kinds of stuff happens. But mescaline is very beautiful. You go up slowly to this beautiful plateau, and you go like this, and then you come back down again. It's a very smooth, lovely high. And it produces some very amazing side effects. which I later discovered a part of the spiritual awakening, actually. So, and because I found it so profound, I took it as a purely spiritual exercise. I would make sure that I was in a very clean environment. I wasn't disturbed by anybody else. I was just taking the mescaline and then digging what is, really enjoying what is, and it was just amazing. So that was very good. And at the same time, I had been reading Ouspensky. Do you know anything about Ouspensky?
No.
Okay. Well, Ouspensky was Gurdjieff. Do you know anything about Gurdjieff? Anyway,
No.
okay. Gurdjieff was a major mystic, Russian mystic, who traveled the whole world gaining mystical experiences. Mm-hmm. And then he got a very huge, you would call it, client base in Russia. And he became very famous. And his major disciple was a guy called Ouspensky. And Ouspensky was particularly good at putting Gurdjieff's teachings, which were quite obscure and difficult to read, into a fairly a system that you could understand. So mm-hmm. I was reading Ouspensky at the time, and when I read Ouspensky, I thought, well, he said that the purpose of life is to awaken. That's what he said, and I was looking at it thinking, well, yeah, I think he's definitely right. But then when you read about what he said you had to do to awaken, I mean, one example is they have this technique where they remember the self at all times. So I could be talking to you, but every now and again I'd stop between, continue stopping to remember myself and then carrying on, So, I mean, if you do that for the whole of your existence, that's pretty hard work, actually, because you're continually stopping to remember. And so I looked at what he was saying, thinking, well, this is great, but I'm young, I'm having a great time, I'm living in London, there's lots of bands on, I'm enjoying myself. I think I'll just give it a miss, So that was my approach at the time. But even then, I'd had these experiences, and that had actually shifted something quite dramatically. So, and then about 6 years later, I was living in Sydney with my wife, and she was going to yoga classes. So I initially wasn't keen, but I thought after a while, I thought I'd just go along and see what it was like. And the teacher was an ex-Jesuit priest, and he stressed relaxation and meditation, and he used to wander around the class during the relaxation, just quoting from the Upanishads and the Dhammapada or the Bhagavad Gita, all the scriptures of the world. He would just quote them while he was giving the relaxation, and that was very inspiring, actually, very inspiring. So that kind of got me back involved in the whole spiritual path, and then we became members of the Brahma Kumaris. Have you ever heard of the Brahma Kumaris? Raja Yoga.
Yes.
Yeah. So they had a very lovely meditation technique, which we both found very peaceful and very calming, very beautiful. But they have this very fixed dogma. The dogma is that 5,000 years ago, I was sitting here talking to you in exactly this. And 5,000 years before that, that was happening again. And in 5,000 years of time, it'll happen again. Everything goes in 5,000 year cycle and completely repeats itself. Okay. So if you get some deja vu about this conversation, well, 5,000 years ago, anyway. So of course we couldn't really we couldn't accept that. I mean, it was just, it's just off the wall, really. So we actually had to. It was a shame because we'd been involved with them for a year or two, and we were really enjoying it, but we just had to let it go. So then we moved up to we live up in the rainforest in northern New South Wales, and we moved here to come and live in the country and set up a pottery. And we got involved with Satchidananda. Have you heard of Satchidananda? Okay, yeah. Satchidananda basically, he was a yoga teacher, but he taught all forms of yoga. He taught Raja Yoga, yoga meditation, Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion, Karma Yoga, the yoga of self-disinterested work, working without attachment. Kriya Yoga, that's a certain set of exercises designed to raise the Kundalini. Etc. Hatha yoga, of course, etc. Mm-hmm. So, but the great thing about him was he taught all these yogas, but he didn't have any dogma. So he basically just taught you the practices, and the practices produced the experience. So, which was very nice, especially having just come from the Brahma Kumaris that had lots of dogma, So, and really, I've always discovered that experience is the best way in spiritual life. Anything that you read is useful, but it's the experience that you need. So anyway, I carried on with that for we did that for years, actually. And I still do lots of the things he taught. I mean, I still do hatha yoga in the morning. I still do meditation. I still do kirtan. I love kirtan with that Sanskrit chanting with a group of people with a harmonium and cymbals and drums and, you know, the whole works. And we really get into it. We've actually had a big kirtan session here at our house every month for 30 years. And it's on Saturday. So we love it. We get really high. Anyway, so yoga nidra. Have you ever heard of yoga nidra? Have you ever heard of yoga nidra?
I haven't, no.
Okay, yoga nidra is a very deep relaxation technique that can take you from being completely exhausted, depressed, and fed up with the world to being the complete opposite, and even wondering which day it is, in 20 minutes. Once you get into it and you get used to doing it, it can just completely transform your whole being in 20 minutes, right?
That's great.
And it's fantastic. I've been doing it every day for 40 years.
Wow.
And I will always find a space for it. My wife thinks I'm a bit, but she does it too. But people think I'm a bit anal about it, you know, because I'm always thinking, when I arrange my day, I'm always thinking, now, where am I going to get my yoga nidra? I have to get it in. It gets in. I get it in somewhere by hook or by crook. Anyway, so that's a great practice. Anyway, so we did that. We're still doing that. And then I ran into Ramakrishna. Have you heard of Ramakrishna?
Yes.
Okay. So I ran into Ramakrishna, and yeah, that guy just blew me away. He still blows me away. Just the most amazing being. So I followed him for 10 years, and I was initiated by a nun in the Ramakrishna Sarada order from India. And I spent 10 years meditating on him, reading everything he said, everything that was written about him. Yeah, so I was doing that. And then one day I was at the market. I was at Byron Bay Market selling my pots, because we sell the pottery at the market. And a friend of mine came up to me. She said, you know, you're really stuck. And I said, no, I'm not. I said, I'm having a lovely time. She said, no, you're really stuck. And I thought, anyway, the net result was she gave me a video to watch. And she said, just try this. So I brought it home and put it on my coffee table, and it sat there for 3 weeks. And then I realized I had to go back to market a week later, and I'd see her again, and she'd want the video back, and she'd ask me what I thought of it. So I thought, well, I better give it a go just to show willing, you know. So I put it into the video recorder and started watching it. And immediately Gangaji came up. Have you seen Gangaji? Do you know Gangaji?
I've heard of him.
Right. Gangaji is a beautiful, well, she's a bit older now, but she's still beautiful. I love beauty of all ages. My wife is 71, and I still think she's beautiful. So Gangaji is a beautiful blonde, long blonde haired lady from the southern USA. And as soon as she came and started talking, I looked at her and thought, oh no, I can't bear this. Because I was so used to Indian gurus. I'd had the 2 Indian gurus. I was so used to seeing, that model. So I thought, no, I can't bear this. So I thought, well, I'll give her 5 minutes. So I gave her 5 minutes. And I thought, I couldn't stop watching the tape. I thought, my God, this is amazing. And 5 minutes. Because she was saying something that I'd read for many years, I knew all about. She was saying, you are that which you seek. You are already that.
Yeah.
All you have to do is stop, look within, and there it is. And I knew all that. I've been doing it for years, but I hadn't done it in the way she said. And it was just the way she said it. It was just very potent. So I took the video back to the market next week, and the girl, my friend, said to me, "Do you know Gangaji is actually in Byron Bay at the moment giving satsang, and she's been here for a month, and she's going to give satsang for another month," which is pretty amazing, because if you know Gangaji, she never spends more than a couple of days anywhere, and for her to be 2 months in one place, it was just so. So anyway, I went along to see her, and the net result of that was, just in the very first meeting, I came out of the meeting kind of inebriated. I couldn't drive. I said, my wife, you'll have to drive home. You know, it was, she just affected me that strongly. It was just that strong.
So there weren't any drugs involved. You were simply.
No. There haven't been any drugs involved for many years. This is just being. Yeah. Because, you know, once you really tap into the source of being, you get really high, really high. Yeah. You don't need drugs. I mean, they're a mere imitation. Anyway,
I think that's a good point, though, that they started you out on the path, but as you've become more enlightened and more awakened, that you don't need them. And so listeners don't think they need to go to drugs to have this kind of experience.
I mean, okay, that's a good point, because so after this satsang, she was giving a week-long silent retreat, which I went to. And on that silent retreat, she asked people to report their experiences. And there were many young people on that retreat who didn't take drugs and had never had any spiritual experience. And they were getting it just like that. And they were reporting the most amazing experiences, which proves two things actually to me. One, that you don't need drugs, like, as you said. I mean, for me, they were a useful in just
They open the door.
Yeah, but by what I'm saying, these people prove that you don't need drugs to open the door. You can open the door if you're pointed in the right place, that was Gangaji's speciality, pointing you where to look, actually. So, and the second thing it proved was that you don't need a lot of prior spiritual experience to get it, to awaken. You don't need a lot of experience. In fact, Gangaji said, I wouldn't totally agree with her here, but she said it, and having seen these reports, I can see what she's saying. Anything you've done up until now, all your spiritual practice has been a waste of time. It's been a waste of investment. You just here now, wake up here and now. That's what she said. And even Ramana, sorry?
By Ram Dass,
Yeah, I've got that lovely book. Yeah. Gorgeous. So even Ramana Maharshi said, and he said, awakening is easy, but after that, the work begins.
Right? Absolutely. Yeah.
So you awaken, but then you fall back to sleep, just like that. Just go straight back to sleep again. Generally, I mean, this retreat, that was the lovely thing about being on a 7-day silent retreat with Gangaji, that once you had your first awakening, you were just surrounded by people who were continually awakening and reporting their awakenings.
Right.
So it actually kept you awake while you were there, right? So you had you woke up and then you had this long experience of awakening. Well, not long, say 4 or 5 days. So that was great. And I had such a deep experience on that particular retreat that, I'd have to say I was basically semi-drunk for the following year. It was that strong. I was almost out of it. And while I was actually on the retreat, I was so out of it, I thought, well, how am I ever going to get home? Because I didn't feel that I'd be capable of driving, driving when you're drunk. Well, I was very drunk. I just thought, I can't drive home. How much is ever going to happen,
I got to ask you, that experience, that 1 year experience, was there any time where you felt that you were falling back to a old way of being, or was it just every day?
Not during that year. That's how lucky I was, because I don't think that's true for most people, actually. And I'll get onto that in a bit. I was very, very fortunate, but I had, Gangaji wouldn't agree, but I had plenty of spiritual practice up until then before I was really ready for it. And when I fell right into it. I fell completely into it with my whole being, It's like when I first fell in love, and the second time I fell in love, actually, when I was very young, I would literally feel like I was falling off a cliff, and I would just dive completely in. I'd lose myself in that romantic love. And this is the same thing. You have to lose yourself completely in love with the divine. That's the only way it really works.
Yeah.
And that's why I had the year-long, I was just so deep in there. I've literally felt I had the same symptoms you get when you fall deeply in love. There was a deep beating of the heart. I felt quite slightly queasy. Didn't feel hungry. My whole body felt like it was glowing. I mean, it was just, So that's how you feel when you feel deeply in love. And if you fall deeply in love with the divine, the same thing happens.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was. Anyway, but the thing about all that is, all right, so for that year, I had that year of grace, I'd call it, real grace. And after that, I then set to work to make sure, by doing continual self-inquiry, that did not go away. I did not want, I was so deeply into it, I felt it couldn't go away, but I've always been aware, looking at other people. I mean, so many people I've met who've had the experience of waking up, and you see them a year or so later and they've completely lost it. They completely lost it because they haven't nurtured it. You have to nurture that experience. You have to continually re-immerse yourself in that.
What are those things that you did to nurture that experience?
All right. So I was very lucky, actually, because after Gangaji, there was another disciple of Papaji. Papaji was Gangaji's guru, and Ramana Maharshi was Papaji's guru, right? Mm-hmm. So there was a peer of Gangaji called Isaac Shapiro, and I used to go and see him. He was giving satsang in Byron Bay. And at one sat saying, he said to me, he said, look, in this moment of experience, right, there are only three things. There are thoughts, including all mind stuff. There are sensations, that's everything detected by the body and its sense organs, and there's the awareness of these. That's all there is. Now, as soon as I heard that, that immediately triggered in me a method of investigation, right? And I call it investigation of experience. And I've been through this with many people, and most people, as long as they're sitting, as long as they're fairly quiet and they're interested, they can get it like that, like that, like that.
Right.
And this
went through this experience, Colin, with Rick. I remember watching that experience.
I would like to go quickly through that because for me, this is the basis of everything I do. It's the basis of all my books. I've now written 15 books on awakening. And this particular simple method is the basis of all 15 books.
Gotcha.
And when I first discovered it, and since then, even then, since then, it's so simple. I keep expecting people to poke holes in it, to find holes in it, you know, holes in the method. And I keep asking people, you find holes in the method. I want people to find holes in it, so that then I can investigate the holes.
That's right.
But so far, I mean, even at that meeting with Rick, I was asking for holes. Nobody's found any holes in it yet. So, of course, I've convinced myself that it works well because it continues to work.
Great accomplishment.
So anyway, I'll take you quickly through it, and I will. With Rick, I asked him with every particular step. I asked him whether he resonated or understood it, but that kind of slowed it down rather. So I will go slowly through it, just step by step, and then at the end you can make any comments. Okay.
Okay.
That's good.
Is that all right?
Better, yeah.
Okay. So it starts, I call it investigation of experience. And what we're doing is we're investigating this moment of our direct experience. That's all we're doing. Okay. So in this moment of direct experience, there are only, as I said before, there are only three elements. There are thoughts, that's everything that's occurring in the mind. There are sensations, that's everything detected by the body and its sense organs. And of course, some things are a mixture of those, like feelings and emotions. They're a mixture of thoughts and sensations, but there's still those two factors. And the third element is there's the awareness of those. That's all there is in this moment. So when you look at that model, the thoughts and sensations, from now on, I'm going to call all mind stuff thoughts. I'm going to call everything detected by the body sensations. The thoughts and sensations are objects. They are things that are perceived. The awareness is the perceiver. It is that which perceives them. Okay. Now, what I'm talking about here, actually, this investigation is to discover self-identity, what we are at our deepest essence. The whole thing for me, the whole basis of living a joyful life is self-identity. It's to identify correctly what we in essence are, and not the difference is what our common essence is actually. Okay. So if you look at these three things, there's awareness and thoughts and sensations. The thoughts and sensations are objects that are continually changing. They come and they go. They come and they go. Since we've been born, since our very birth, the thoughts and sensations, which is how we recognize the mind body, they continually come and they continually go. The only constant since we've been born, and the only constant that's here now, is awareness itself. Okay. That is the constant. It is the constant conscious perceiving presence. Okay. That's always here. Mm-hmm. So if we are looking for what we are, our identity, we would all identify as having been present since we were born. We would all say that we've been here since we were born. We would also, if we would, so anyway. Within that, the only thing that's been present here since we were born is this awareness itself. The rest of it has come and gone. All of our sensations, all of our thoughts, the way we experience our mind body, even our mind body, has come and gone all the time. The only constant is awareness itself. So with that model and looking at it from that point of view, the natural assumption is we are awareness itself. That is our essence, pure awareness, in which everything, our mind and body, thoughts, come and go. Okay. Now, I'll just stop here a minute. Do you have any problems with that so far?
I wanted to understand conscious awareness.
We'll get onto that. We'll get onto that. It's just a bit. Let's just keep going. That's further down the track. You can ask me questions about that. Okay, so Yes, because awareness has two facets, actually. It has the facet of universal awareness and the facet of individual awareness. And individual awareness is just a small element of the universal awareness. And when you're talking about conscious awareness, that's the mind being conscious of awareness. That's the individual awareness conscious of the universal awareness, okay? But we'll get further into that. So, all right, so once we've decided that our essence is this awareness itself, we can investigate awareness quite simply to find out its facets, okay? So the first thing about awareness is that it's always silent because there's awareness of the slightest sound, the smallest thought. So awareness is silent, okay? Awareness is still because it's aware of the smallest movement of body or mind, therefore it's still. Therefore it's serene. I like to rhyme things, so I'll get to that. But so it's still, silent, and serene, okay? Now it's here before all things. And while we're talking in this context, things are thoughts and sensations. It's here before all things appear. Then as they appear, it's of them, it is the seer. And then when, as they must, they disappear, it is still always here. You get that? Okay. So within that, that means it's pure. When I say pure, what I mean is that no thing appearing in it, i.e. thought or sensation, can taint it in any way. Thoughts and sensations come and go within that, leaving it unchanged, untainted. So it's pure. It's radiant. What I mean by that is it provides the illumination by which the thoughts and sensations are seen or noticed. Okay. For anything in existence to be perceived, it has to be illuminated so that it can be perceived. Illumination is a prerequisite of perception, okay? And the third thing is that it's pristine in that no thing that appears in it can degrade it in any way. So it's still silent and serene, and it's pure, radiant, and pristine, okay? It's omnipresent in our awareness because in our experience, it's omnipresent in our experience because experience is awareness of thoughts and sensations. Therefore, obviously, awareness is omnipresent in our experience. It's omniscient of our experiences because our experiences appear in it and are seen by it. And it's omnipotent in that no experience has any power over it. It is that in which our experiences come and go, ebb and flow. So no experience has any power over it, okay? So now, just simply by investigating this moment of experience and then investigating the facets of awareness itself, we've reached the still, silent, serene, pure, radiant, pristine, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent field of awareness in which all things, thoughts, sensations arise, in which they abide, by which they are spied, and to which they subside, into which they subside. And this pure, radiant, pristine awareness is the essential essence of what we are.
So
where does it go when you go to sleep?
It doesn't go anywhere. What goes somewhere is the individual element of that. That goes to sleep, okay? But the universal in which all things appear is still there. Because, for instance, when you're asleep, if there's a dream occurs, there's awareness of that. If there's a strong sensation that occurs, like the desire to go to the toilet or something, there's awareness of that. The awareness is there. It's just the individual awareness which is concerned with the mind seeing things, that goes to sleep. That's not there, but even that's dormant and in abeyance. There are things.
The observer, if I get it right, is that right? It's the observer that makes that awareness possible. The observer.
Well, the observer. When we're talking here about, if you define the observer as the individual awareness, okay.
Yes.
Then that is the element that allows us to be aware of the universal awareness. That's true.
Okay, so I want this with a purpose of defined by an intention. So the intender, see, I get to this point. if intention creates a beginning, then something or someone must be willing. So whether it is the beginning of an intention that then somebody, something or someone, and I look at it, the divine as that intender, then gets us to say, okay, that this is the way the purpose of this existence is. You are the cell of my being that exists today, gone tomorrow, but you bring you manifest my expression. You're building, you're helping to for this universe, this universal consciousness, to be the best it can be.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I agree with most of that, but the universal consciousness is always the best it can be. It is always. There is no improvement. It experiences the universe through us, right? And we are everything we experience, every thought and sensation we have appears in that.
Well,
so that
coming from that perspective, then I question free will.
Well, okay, free will is an interesting one. So, are you happy Are you happy with where we got to with my investigation? Because that we haven't actually expanded that to the universal. We've only done the personal with that, but that's fine. I'm happy. If you're happy with the universal, then that's fine. We can just talk about free will. Do you want to talk about free will?
No, I wanted to go back one moment to where we were before. So you explained sleep. What about as people get dementia?
Okay, well, as they get dementia, once again, because that individual awareness is acting through the brain and through the mind, that individual awareness can become distorted. Okay.
Can become what?
Distorted, because the brain is no longer functioning properly. But that still does not affect the universal awareness that we are. It's just that every experience that mind body then is having is different than it would be if the mind was embodied, if the brain was clear. And I mean, I don't know, because I haven't reached dementia yet, but I suspect that if you're fully grounded in identification with pure awareness, fully grounded in that, and you don't fall asleep, I suspected that will actually survive dementia. Okay. But I don't know, because I'm not dementia yet.
To interview people with different stages of dementia and see if that is in fact true. Yes,
what would be interesting would be to find people that we know were fully awake. Well, you see, it may well be that when you're fully awake, you don't get dementia. Who can tell? That's a possibility too, because I'm convinced that awakening opens new neural pathways in the brain, right? And as it does that, it will bypass it will create these new neural pathways, will take care of those that are being ossified by dementia. Okay.
Yeah,
so it's possible
that talks about the biology. You're talking about the biology of evolution here. And
so
I want to get back to that place of where we are, when we are at cause for our existence and understand our purpose, there may come a time where dementia does come into the picture.
It may be, because you see,
it may come, but but from my perspective, that simply says you're complete. You have finished. It's done. Whether it's done, it's over. You've done a good job. Good job. Good job.
Yeah, that's true. But when you awaken and start investigating the infinite, you're investigating the infinite with something which is finite, the mind, and you never run out of things to discover. There's always more to discover.
That's right.
Always. So you're never completely done, because there's always more out there to find, which is just wonderful. You know, it's just wonderful.
If we're coming from the perspective that we're here to discover, that's one perspective. I come from the place that we're here to create, and we're here to create that experience of being the best potter, the best doctor, the best carpenter,
yeah,
the
yeah, I
best
agree.
whatever. I mean, we're here in the bidding of divine purpose. And so to discover that we're doing its bidding, it's not such a bad place.
Of course not. Of course not.
Yeah.
Once you discover that that is your essence and that is the doer, we're using you as an instrument to do,
Yeah,
then suddenly you've lost all angst about your being.
That's right.
You know? I mean,
That's
and
right.
from losing all angst and the continual discovery, that just creates joy and creation by itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what Dr. Eva and I have been, this mystery that we biologically, with this 50 trillion cells and these 100, every cell having 100 trillion atoms, all on purpose, purposeful, with a great intention from a great intender who is saying, okay, so now if you're aware that that's who you are with this wonderful purpose, that energy never dies. That manifestation of who you are exists through this field of universal consciousness.
Well, you are this field of universal consciousness, actually.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
It's never separate, never separate.
That's right. And then that's exactly right. From my perspective, of course, I haven't been there, done there yet. So I always look at it from a position of how does this information has individuals experience a satisfying life, understanding that this information is liberating.
Yeah, well, that's
the
right.
Old thought of being a victim in your life, instead here you are at cause for the creator that you are.
Yeah, so but it all comes back to self-identity, what you think you are in essence, what you identify with and as. If you identify, like most people do, as being a separate object in a universe of separate objects, then immediately that creates a great weight of suffering, actually.
Right.
Because
yes.
Yeah. So, and to get where you're talking about, you actually have to go beyond that and realize that you are not a separate object. So self-identity.
I say that, and this is the thought. The 50 trillion cells are all connected.
Yeah.
In this universe.
Yeah.
In this universe.
Yeah.
We are all connected.
Yeah.
From that divine intention.
Yeah, of course. But it's a matter of realizing
and that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
It only causes the turbulence of this existence when cells choose to do something separate, off purpose. And off purpose mean not getting that you're connected. So I mean, the simple form here is that you can cause to have a satisfying life when you get that you're a contribution to the betterment of the human condition or not. And in order for you to be a contribution to the betterment of the human condition, you have to be okay yourself. You have to be a contribution to your mind, to your body, to your state of being. And that occurs through your journey of evolution. It may be enlightenment.
It actually occurs through awakening.
Through awakening.
Yeah, that's what it comes to. So for me, my main thrust is always to try and point people towards awakening. Because once they awaken, and then to encourage them to stay awake, you have to continually, I recommend at least 3 times a day, you spend at least 20 minutes sinking deeply into awareness of and identification with pure awareness, at least 3 times a day, 20 minutes. And if in any stage during the day, mental suffering occurs, which I'm not talking about mental pain here. There's a difference between pain and suffering. Suffering is what happens when you relate everything to the small I, to this individual object. Once you start relating everything to that, that causes mental suffering. So for me, as soon as any mental suffering occurs, or you create suffering for another being, which is just as important, this should be a wake-up call to the fact that you're misidentifying.
Yeah.
This should wake you up like that, like that. So as soon as, not only do I say you should spend at least 3 periods a day deeply immersed in awareness itself, but if during the day or when during the day mental suffering occurs, you should look at it immediately and say, okay, am I that which is suffering, or am I that which is aware of the suffering? Okay. Because as soon as you know you're the awareness itself, the suffering, which is caused by misidentification, just vanishes. Okay.
Eva, let me ask you this question about what Colin is getting to, that sometimes people just don't get it. They're not wanting to be aware of something that their mind is doubting, whether through an egotistical mindset, whether a mental illness, schizophrenia, is in denial that anything can solve their problems. How do you deal with that?
Well,
How do you make them get to that awareness?
yeah, you're talking about having insight. And one of the biggest problems with mental illness is that it's often that insight that's blocked, that's damaged. So the classic example is somebody who's drinking too much, yet it's completely out of their awareness that they're drinking too much. And so it's very hard to get them to change their behavior when they can't correctly identify the problem. The same oftentimes you see with bipolar or schizophrenia, that the symptoms, they don't understand where the symptoms are coming from, and they can't get in alignment with you to understand how to treat those symptoms. That's, I think, a very different conversation, though, than we're trying to have with Colin. I think, Colin, your focus is people who are mentally healthy and who are looking to experience life from a different vantage point than the traditional Western model.
Yeah, that's
And that's what I think the focus of our conversation is today. And I don't think we should rush past it, because I think what you were saying is profound. And I think most people in Western society don't have the viewpoint. So I think it would be very useful to back up a moment, and for you to explain again this fundamental belief that you have, that we are not all separate.
Okay.
Because I think that runs contrary to a lot of, Western society thinking. And we want to delve into that more to understand that. And I think that is our purpose today, is to help people who do have insight, who are on that journey to have a better life, and to give them different ways than they would normally come upon to have a more satisfying life.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple of things about that. It is true that most people don't understand this.
Correct.
However, I maintain that there is an unconscious recognition of the oneness in everybody, in fact. And I'll give you an example, just a simple example. In England, I went to England fairly recently. In England, only 8% of rapes and 10% of murders are solved. Okay, and everybody knows this. And if there's a theft occurs and the thieves don't steal more than £1,000 worth of stuff, the police don't even investigate. So you're living in a society where if you want to rape, you've got a very good chance of getting away with it. If you want to murder, you've got a very good chance of getting away with it. If you want to steal, you've got a very good chance of getting away with it, right? You think a situation like that, where everybody knows these statistics, would be a nightmare. People would be out there just generally, but it's not the case. It's a civilized society. In general, everybody you meet is fairly friendly. I mean, and this can only come from an empathy with other people, from a recognition, a deep recognition, not necessarily conscious, unconscious, that we are all one. We're all in this together. We are all of the same life force. We're sharing this journey together. Without that, when you look at the statistics I've just given you, it would be a nightmare. Okay.
Well, I like to talk about the fact that we're called humankind. It's
Yes.
literally in our label.
Yeah,
And-
that's lovely. That's lovely.
And,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I agree with you that
Yeah.
predominantly people are empathic, they are caring, they are compassionate, and
Yeah.
we are based on helping one another.
Yeah.
I think this ties to our evolution where we have young that are so dependent for so long. If we didn't care for our young, we wouldn't have a species. So it's our very nature to care for one another.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
humankind.
Yes, but I still think it
So
shows
you're
an
saying that they're doing a better job in England of caring for their young. They are here, might be the case.
Yeah, who knows? But let's not get into that. It's another big discussion. Okay, so where were we? We were talking about. Yeah, so I think there's
the notion that we're not separate, I think, is what's profound. And that's, as you say, that's the focus of your
Yes.
many teachings,
That's right.
books, works, etc. And that's the nugget that we'd like to give our listeners today.
Yes. So, and now talking about you were talking about people who drink too much or whatever, just earlier on. Now, I was at a party some years ago, and I was talking to a guy who was fairly drunk. We were both quite stoned, and we just started talking about the oneness of the life force, the fact that we both have the same life force. Mm-hmm. And we could both see that's fairly obvious. We all agree that we share the one life force. And that soon morphed into the discussion I've just been having earlier on about consciousness and how and within a couple of minutes, even in that milieu, that environment, he really got it. You know, even although he'd had a few and he was stoned, he really got it. So I think it's very available, even and even people who have got mental illness, they have periods of clarity. People who are depressed, they have periods when they're not depressed. They have the ability in those periods to get it, right? It just needs to be pointed out to them when they're in those situations. And whenever they take depression, for instance, if you're heavily depressed, you cannot get this. You're just too bound up in your own self. You're the victim. But when you come out of that, you can get it, and then you can use it as a means of catching the depression as soon as it starts and going back to awareness for awareness. It can be used as a tool to stop you re-entering the depression. Now, it takes a lot of work, but it's well worth it, of course. And I've got quite a few correspondents who've had this experience, and they realize how empowering it is, you know. So and I've got another friend who has a mental illness, and he says to me that he wrote to me saying how being aware of awareness makes him realize that when these strange thoughts come up, when the illness starts to take over, he can watch it from awareness now. He can actually watch it from awareness. It's still happening, but it no longer affects him in the way it would. So I think to say that it's not possible for people who have got various addictions or various mental illnesses, I think even that's not true. I think this is accessible to everybody in their clear periods. Okay.
Well, that's the point there. The point is, what does it take for a society like ours, where we see such a distinct difference from right to left, and many societies, to come to this awareness that allows them to then get to shift from a victim mindset to a contributing mindset.
Okay, so within that, I don't think this is a societal shift. I think it's a personal shift, and everybody who wakes up needs to do all they can to encourage and help other people to awake. Right.
Okay, so that makes sense. I mean, the idea of more tutors out there.
We all need to spread it as much as we can. Anybody who's awakened should spread it in every way they possibly can, right, to provide other people with pointers to awakening, to encourage people to awakening. Even if you don't do it by teaching or by writing, you can do it by your being. People can see how you are. People look at you and they think, wow, look at this guy's always cheerful. He's always joyful. What's going on with him? Yeah. Just by living it, you can encourage other people.
And we all need to do that. By living it. Right.
It's a grassroots thing that's going to build from the bottom up. We can't pass a law saying you must all wake up, you know. That's not going to happen. We just need to encourage each other as much as we possibly can. And this is what we're doing on this podcast, you know.
Yes,
So-
that's right.
And
I think
if you had to succinctly say, what does it mean to wake up? How would you describe that to somebody where this is a new concept?
Well, okay. So the investigation I've just taken you through at the beginning takes you from thinking that you're a separate object, a mind body, and realizing that you are actually the awareness in which they appear, right? And for me, being awake, it just means identifying with the awareness rather than with the mind body, actually. That's all it means. And staying identified with that. Yeah. Because when you're identified as awareness, all mental suffering caused by thinking that you're a separate individual object, it just vanishes completely, because you know that's not the case. That object is actually just, it's an illusory. When I say illusory, what I mean by illusory is it means it comes and goes. It comes and goes. It's not permanent. You are the permanent awareness in which that appears. And once you identify with that, then all of the programs in the mind that run to do with self-image, to do with self-interest, to do with self-preservation, to do with self-aggrandizement, to do with self-hate, self-loathing, all those programs to do with the small self, which continually run in the mind, they stop, because they don't have a basis to work on. That self, you realize, does not actually exist. It's a purely mental creation that you've created, actually, within awareness itself. And not only does it affect you in that way, but it also affects completely the way you see other people, because you now no longer see them as separate objects, which you've made judgments about. You now see them as just being other expressions of the same awareness that you are. So in fact, there is no separation at the essential level. And that completely changes the way that you react to people, the way that you live in the world, you know? So for me, awakening is identifying with and as this pure awareness that is the essence of all things. You can call it awareness or consciousness, whatever you like. And to stay awake, and then to remain vigilant, so that as soon as any suffering occurs, or you make other people suffer, that is a reawakening call.
It was beautiful. Can you walk us through, you said that we should each identify if we're causing suffering. Can you walk us through a recent example where you did that and what those steps looked like?
I'll give you a very trite example, okay? My son and his wife have moved back in with us recently because they cannot afford to rent in our local area. The rents are so horrific now, they cannot afford to. And this is happening all over Australia, actually.
All over the world.
Yeah, all over the world.
Yeah.
So anyway, they moved in with us, and we have this complex, very enjoyable fantasy board game that we like to play called Talisman. It's based on Lord of the Rings. And we all get into it. We love it. Apart from my wife, who thinks it's a bit silly, but that's all right. That's fine. So we played this game. I was playing with my son the other day, and we were both jockeying to go up and win. And he was just about to win, and I had two spells, very potent spells, and I cast them upon him, and he immediately lost all chance of winning, and I went up and win. Well, and I actually felt bad about that. I could feel it. I felt bad about. So that was an example. Now, I know that wasn't misidentification, but the thing is that when you are awake, if you cause any kind of suffering to anybody else, you feel it immediately. It's so you don't actually have to make any effort to be compassionate or to be kind. These are just natural outcomes of awakening. You can feel empathy is, empathy in a way is the right word, but it because of the oneness, there's no effort required. It just happens.
Yeah, I think that's a good description of it. It's unconditional.
Yeah, that's right, because we are all only one.
But that's an example of you being awake, and then you inadvertently caused pain and you felt his pain. But what's an example of when you fall back asleep and then you cause either your own suffering or someone else's? How do you get out of it then?
Well, then, as I say, when the suffering occurs, it should be a wake-up call to yourself. You have to stay vigilant so that because as soon as mental suffering occurs, you know it, you recognize it. And as soon as that occurs, then immediately you should look at, you just do this simple investigation. Am I that suffering itself, or am I that which is aware of the suffering? Because the suffering is just an object. It's one of the objects. Thoughts and sensations is just an object appearing in the awareness that you are. And it can immediately bring you back to seeing that you are actually the awareness itself and not the suffering. And as soon as you do that, the suffering vanishes. It's quite amazing. It's a magic.
Does the suffering vanish, or does the suffering
Well,
diminish or feel less?
Well, it has no power over you. It has no power over you. That's the point. It has no power. It loses its power.
I tried this technique when I had the shingles vaccine. I felt really, really horrible when I had the vaccine. And I tried this technique, and what it did for me is it gave me like more of a distance from it, but it didn't eliminate it.
No, it depends. This depends on the strength of your concentration on it, really. I'll give you an example now. Because I woke up in 1996, 25 years ago. And since then, I'm lucky. I've got a very healthy body. I haven't really suffered any great pain. So I never really knew. I wondered what would happen with pain.
Right.
I wondered. Anyway, so 2 years ago, I got very bad toothache. Now, you know what toothache's like. It doesn't matter even however many drugs you take. It virtually doesn't do much against toothache. Very strong toothache. So I thought, well, here's a chance to put my money where my mouth is, So I lay down. Yeah. It's, you need to put your money where your mouth is. Otherwise, why bother? It's just a waste of time. Anyway, so I lay down and I just noticed, because I have a meditation technique where what you do is you notice that there was awareness of the thoughts and sensations. That's all you do. That's all you do. I'll go into that in a bit if you're interested. Anyway, so I just immediately went into this. I noticed that there was awareness of the toothache. Okay. Now, the stronger my noticing, now when I use the word notice, that means become aware of, right? So the stronger my awareness of the toothache became, the stronger my awareness of awareness became, because the awareness, so I was aware of the awareness of the toothache. And what happened was the toothache slowly went into the background, and the awareness which it was in became into the foreground. So there was awareness of the awareness with the toothache completely irrelevant almost. And then I went to sleep. And when I woke up, in the middle of the night and the toothache was there again, and it was pretty strong, I had to have the tooth out the next day. Anyway, I just went into the same practice and it worked again, went back to sleep. So
that's great example.
Yeah.
Because I'm as a practicing psychiatrist, I'm very logical and I want to see results. And so I think it's really important with this video series that people have something they can take home, they can try. So it could be any kind of suffering. It could be that you're hungry. It could be that you're tired. It doesn't have to be a toothache. It could be that traffic frustrated me. But whenever somebody gets that trigger again, to try to do this meditation that you're talking about, to be aware of that suffering and not to be over-identified with the suffering. In other words, I'm a person stuck in traffic, or I am aware that a piece of me feels like they're stuck in traffic, but that's not me. That's going to come.
What you actually have to notice is that you have to notice that you're aware of it. So it's awareness of awareness. You don't just say I'm aware of the traffic, because then you have to notice that your awareness is awareness of awareness. So this simple meditation technique, people say to me, well, what can you use? That investigation I took you through earlier on in the whole show, that's what I use on a regular basis, because that brings you straight there. But in between, if I'm just want to do a meditation practice, I have lots of practices I've developed over the years, but this is a simple one, is the awareness of awareness. And all you do is you sit or lie in a very comfortable position, and you notice that you're aware of your thoughts and sensations. Now, you don't follow the thoughts and sensations. You don't judge them. You don't even label them. You just notice that there's awareness of them. You notice that there's awareness of the thoughts and sensations. And within that, what you're actually doing is you're becoming aware of awareness. That's what you're doing. You're aware of awareness. And the thoughts and sensations are obviously just fleeting objects appearing in that. That's what they are.
So if I had to, because we're running a little bit out of time and I wanted to get down. So if I understand the value and importance of having a satisfying life from Colin's perspective, is that to be aware of your awareness of the identified with that awareness.
And
identified with that awareness, that being able to get to that place, to be living a life from that awareness,
Yeah.
it will allow you to experience a satisfying life.
Not only satisfying, but completely and utterly joyful.
Well,
The joy just wells up. It just wells up.
Yes, joy is an interesting perspective, and I agree with it. But boy, is it satisfying to be joyful.
Yeah, of course. I mean, for me, the whole purpose of life is to be joyful and to spread joy wherever you can.
Well,
And
that's
to
it.
enable others to be joyful.
So where I come from is having a contributing mindset means that you are making a difference to everyone around you, to every cell in your body, to everything else.
Yeah, of course. And
that contribution,
that
contributing mindset contribution reacts my chemicals to do the job they're supposed to do, which was meant by the divine. It was intended by it through its evolutionary process, right?
This whole manifestation is just that enjoying itself. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's just that enjoying itself. And we are just instruments through which that does it.
Yes, that's right. The
So
expression.
if you're experiencing joy, you are basically fulfilling the purpose of life.
Absolutely. I got it. Yeah. Joy and satisfaction. So it's being satisfied that I have a life, that I'm living this life, that that I understand my purpose for what I'm here for, and that just through the act of being alive and fulfilling on that purpose, I'm unconditionally making the world a better place. And so I'm manifesting what the intender had in mind.
Yeah, you can put it like that. Yeah. That's good.
Can you put it in your words, Colin, before we have to wrap up, if you wanted to summarize for our listeners?
Well, yeah, I mean, I basically did. For me, the whole thing is about joy, okay? Not only joy, but also, it's also about love. The thing about love, for me, the word love means no separation. That's actually what it means, no separation. I'll give you an example of why I say that, why I call it no separation. If you take I call it the hottest and the coldest form of love, okay? The hottest form of love is passionate love, when you're deeply in love with another individual. And the coldest form of love is universal love, when you're in where you love everybody equally. When I say coldest, I don't mean it's cold, but coolest. It's not hot and passionate. It's almost impassionate, but it's a universal love. There's eros and agape. That's the two ends of the spectrum. And in between, there are all sorts of love. Now, when you're passionately in love with somebody, you long to be with that person all the time. You just want to be with that person. Then that is no separation. Okay. And at the other end of the spectrum, agape, the universal love, you are in love with everybody because there is no separation. There is no separation. And that naturally produces universal love. So for me, love in all of its various manifestations is no separation. Okay. And within that, then there is automatic compassion, empathy, and joy. Actually, that produces joy. So for me, they are the purposes of life, joy and love. And you manifest those without any effort once you awaken, because they are natural and implicit properties of the universal consciousness that we all are. They are there, and they will naturally manifest through you when you identify with and as that.
So the awakening really is no separation, and to not over-identify with, like you called it, the small I.
Well, not identify with that at all, actually.
Not identify at all.
No, not at all. Don't give it one iota of credence as what you think you are, as what you are. No.
And I think that's interesting. And I think that's where there's a little difference between where you and Lou, fall on this.
Yeah.
And so I think the listeners have to discern for themselves, you know, what I like to do is I like to use myself as an instrument and see what feels right. And so to give it a try to what you're saying, to go to the meditative spot, to become aware of awareness and see what that means, and see if you can hold that during your day and see how you feel with that. I know I've been, you know, in this friendship business relationship with Lou for a while, and I can tell you I'm feeling a lot better. A lot better. So I'm excited to get to know you today, Colin, and listen to your work and try to read some of those 15 books. Because I think you have a really important message, and I love the way things flow from you. You know, like you said, just being around you is uplifting. You look fabulous, healthy, vibrant, joyful, love. And I've heard you talk about how these books just sort of, you know, pour out of you without the suffering. You know, I have my own books, and I think of writing a book and I think immediately of suffering. So I like the way you know, flipped the script here, and it's powerful, powerful. So it's been a really nice time with you, and I hope that we get to be with you again. And I love your openness that you tell people they can email you, they can contact you. A lot of these tools that you've mentioned are up on your website. Tons of books to access, and spread the word, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And
be
the change you wish to see. You're vibrating this message, and it's a delight to be around you.
Thank you. And it's very nice to meet you guys.
Thank you, Colin.
I love talking about this. I love talking about this stuff. I could talk about it all day.
And you do a great job.
I gotta go to work, guys. Thank you so much.
Colin, thank you so much.
3 minutes late.
Thank you.
Be well, everyone. Bye.
And you have a great day. Have a great day.
Great. Likewise. Goodbye. Very good. Let me just pause this a sec.